I'm Frank Wooden, and one of the partners at Simon Cross. The other two partners on this call with me, John Hughes and Barbara Ybarra, they are the experts when it comes to help. I need to raise money in difficult times. More and more, that's the feedback that we are getting from nonprofits. As a matter of fact, I was talking to someone at a nonprofit earlier this week about this webinar, and the response was, Lord knows we could use the help in that area. So I think that probably catches the sentiment of so many. So we're going to split this into two portions today. Barbara Ybarra is going to talk about fund development, and she'll go first. We'll also have an opportunity for any questions after she presents, and the questions can come in the way of typing it in the chat, or as we've been in enough Zoom calls, raise your hand, unmute yourself, and we'll do it. And then John Hughes will do the wrap up, and John will talk about, kind of give you a little bit of an oversight into grant writing, another area of great potential for a number of nonprofits right now. So without further ado, I want to introduce Barbara Ybarra, our newest partner with Simon Cross, a great, I just can't say enough about what she has already been doing with some of the partners that we have been working with in fund development. So I am really pleased to turn it over to Barbara, and it's in good hands right now.
Thank you so much, Frank, and thank you all for being here today. I think that's a little bit better lighting. We're a year into this, and I'm still technologically challenged, so I forget that, the lighting is off. But I'm excited to be here today. I have spent the last 25 years of my career in the fund development space. So I love fundraising. It's exciting. I love working with our clients on it. I just got off of a call right before this one with one of our coaching clients. It was his first day today, and I'm just completely fired up about, let's talk about raising money and how you do it. And it's always a great time to, when I meet with the client, especially for the first time, to find out, what do they think about fund development? What do they think about, how do they feel about it? And I've never had anyone say, I love it. They actually say, I hate it. It's the one thing I don't want to do. It's the one thing that I look at the list that I need to call, and I just stare at it and don't pick up the phone. And so this client in particular was very forthcoming. He's wonderful, and will be a great coaching client for Simon Cross. So I told him, I said, I'm getting on a webinar. I'm going to use you as an example of some of the things not to do. And he said it was okay, as long as I didn't tell anyone who he was. And I said, that's perfectly fine. But what he looked at was, I don't want to do it. And that's the thing that, like I said, is overwhelming what the sentiment. Nobody wants to ask people for money. And the reason why is, one of the reasons why is it's a really uncomfortable conversation to have. In general, money is something that we've been taught to not talk about. I know for myself that, I grew up that you don't talk about money. It's rude, and you don't engage in, you wouldn't ask someone, how much money do you make in a year? Or how much did you pay for your house if you are at a dinner party? Because they might not invite you back. So it's an uncomfortable conversation to have in general. And as we start to look at fundraising, it does spill over to that uncomfortability of, I have to ask someone for money. And it feels a little beneath me, or it doesn't feel good, or it feels like I just, can I ask them for anything else? Can you volunteer? Can you come and paint the fence? Can I count on you to bring food? But when it comes to that actual solicitation of money, it's really difficult. And what we have found over the years is, because that exists, there are strategies that we can put in place so that we avoid all that. And one of the strategies is to be really prepared to know what you are walking into. the more prepared you are, the more comfortable you feel about putting yourself out there and not rambling and not like, I don't know, am I asking for money this time? Am I not asking for money? Did I do enough work? Do I know enough about this donor to be able to feel comfortable asking them for $10,000? Because maybe they've given you $10,000 in the past, so it is okay. But if they've given you $100 in the past, a $10,000 ask might not be the appropriate ask amount. So the more information you can gather, the better. What we did at Simon Cross and what we're working with all of our clients is to go over what we've created, the 4 points. And we have developed this system. It's a comprehensive system that helps create those strategies to be able to make those asks. And an ask is anywhere, any amount of money, but it's the same strategy that you're going to ask for $100 as you're going to ask for $1 million and everything in between. So our 4 points, I'll go over them and then I'll dive a little deeper into each one of them. So we start with you're in sales. This is a sales job. Fundraising is just like any other sales, and that's not a comfortable thing for some people, but we work through it. The other is we want people to think like organizers. You're really looking at one donor at a time and one donor to the next donor. And the next is you have to ask. You have to make the ask. I know that sounds simple, but when we think about, I've had so many people say, I've gone to lunch with the person, they know I'm the development director, they're a philanthropist. I just hope that they offer, like they just want to give the money. They're just going to tell me, I'm going to give you $10,000. That doesn't usually happen that way. You usually have to make the ask. And then last of the 4 points is to say thank you. And I have a great many examples of that with our current clients to talk about the thank you. So starting at point number 1, you're in sales. The client that I just got off the phone with, who I said I was going to use as the example, he had spent I just found out today that he'd spent 30 years of his career in this sales job. He was a salesperson and he didn't like it that much. But he understands the mechanics of it. So I shared, well, you're further ahead than some of the other groups that we work with because you already understand that. But I said, and he said, oh, why do you use the sales tactic in a nonprofit? I said, because we're still sharing what we are offering. You're still sharing with a donor, your customer. You're still sharing, what do you do? You're still sharing with them what you have to offer to help them with their philanthropy goals. The other piece of the sales that we use is you want to look at your numbers. Yesterday, I worked with a woman who wants to create a campaign for $10,000 a month of recurring donors. And so we use the opportunity to go through our working meeting during our time. And she said, I said, how much money do you have now? And she's told me it was $4,300. And I asked, how many donors are there? And there were 80. Well, when we really dug deep into it, it turned out that there was really only $1,300 of donors per month. And so that's why knowing your numbers is really important. Because it was $2,000 less a month she thought was coming in. And now it changes the strategy or changes the timeline to get to that 10,000. She'd like to be at the 10,000 by the end of the year. Without knowing those numbers, we would have developed a timeline and done activities and action steps based on the information that she thought. So looking at your numbers, and that's all in that sales piece of it. And we work very closely with our clients to dive into that. The next is looking at this as an organizer and an organizing perspective. And the reason I use that word is it really is like anything else that anybody's organized. If you've ever organized a birthday party, if you've ever organized a block party, if you've ever organized around getting voters to the polls, anything like that, it's always about one person and one person and one person. And I have more examples than I have time to share with you all about, well, how do we talk to everybody? How do we reach everybody? And the fact of the matter is, you can't. There's like 8 billion people in the world, and you don't have, there's not enough time in your lifetime to reach everybody. So what we look at is, who do we know today? And I always start with, who do you know right now? So who's on your board? Who are already your donors? Because they already care about your organization. They've already invested. How are we talking to them? How are we engaging them to be part of the organization? But then who do they know? And how are they being trained to be ambassadors or to be champions of your organization to bring in additional donors? And how are we staying close to them? So I had a group years ago. My dad said, oh yeah, my daughter can help you. So I was voluntold to help this group. They were wonderful people, but they showed up at my office one day and I said, oh, okay, we're having a meeting. Let's go do this. And they wanted to put on an event that they had never put on an event before. They wanted it to be really special. It was their 30th anniversary. And they were the ones who asked me, how do we talk to everybody? And I said, you can't. And I don't want you to look at it from that perspective also either. I want you to look at it from let's look at all your board members and who do they know? And let's look at the businesses and the organizations and the foundations that have supported you in the past. And we're going to start really, really small. So it's like a bullseye. And we're going to start, who's that core? And it's going to ripple out into those people knowing another person who knows another person who knows another person. I went to the event. It was a spectacular event. They had every elected official from local to federal elected official at their event. They had a beautiful night. They just did a fun, it was a great time. They could not have been happier. And the reason they were able to get their congressperson to come, and the reason they were able to get their mayor to not only their city, but the neighboring city, was because someone on their board knew the mayor or someone, and they made that ask and they made those connections. They raised a ton of money. They did some really creative stuff and it was great. But it all started with, who do you know now and who cares about the organization? Who cares about the success of the event you're going to have, or who cares about the success of your mission? The next point is ask. And the ask is the part where it all sort of happens or falls apart because you don't want to go into that meeting to say, can you give me $1,000 without being really prepared to make that $1,000 ask. One of the things that we've introduced with our clients is a meeting plan. And the meeting plan is really, really simple document, but it goes through all of the details to know, is this meeting about a solicitation? Are we at that point to sit down and say, hi, Daniel, I've talked to you. I know what your interests are. I know what you care about. I know what your funding priorities are. I know that you gave us $5,000 last year. Can you support our organization $5,000 again this year? And you're going to tell me yes, or you're going to tell me no. You either, and the great thing about this is that you don't have anything anyway. So you're really not losing anything. And the more that we think about it in those terms, like, I didn't have the $5,000 when I walked in, I'm either going to walk out with $5,000 or be where I was before. When you have the meeting plan, and thank you, Daniel, for letting me use you as the example, but when you have the meeting plan, it's because you've walked through those strategies and you've understood what you're asking. Sometimes meetings are just about, I want to let you know what your $5,000 gift did last year. It increased the number of women that we're serving. It increased the number of children we're feeding. It increased the number of incarcerated men who are getting jobs. All of the important work that everybody's doing. When you're prepared, the ask goes a whole lot better. But you do have to make the ask. Nobody is a mind reader, and so they know that you need the money. But if you don't ask, maybe you don't need it. Maybe you are one of the lucky Mackenzie Scott donors, and you have $10 million that you're just sitting on. That I don't know that. So you don't want to just like cross your fingers and hope that they say, I'm going to give you $5,000 again. That happens sometimes, but not always without the ask. And then the final thing here, and this is my favorite thing. It really, really is, because it has the most impact. It's the saying thank you piece. It's the way that we steward our donors is what keeps them coming back. I have had the opportunity over a many number of years in this field to talk to philanthropists, not soliciting them for a gift, but to ask them, tell me why you give to organizations. Why did you choose X? And every single answer is different. Every single answer is, I saw them in the newspaper. I went to an event. My family was affected by this disease, on and on and on. When I ask them the question about why do you continue to give, it's always the same answer. And it's because they feel engaged in the organization, they know what's going on, and they feel like they are part of the work. The organization has made them feel like they're not just a wallet. They're not just there to write checks, and then we don't talk to them. And then the next time we call, we're asking for money again. And then we don't talk to them. And then we call and ask money again. I had a conversation last Friday with a CEO of a major corporation who is a philanthropist, I should say, and was a major donor of an organization that I know well. And I'm not affiliated with them, but I know them well. And I said, I apologize for their bad work, because I feel like it's my responsibility as a fundraising professional to say, sorry when people in my field don't do what they should do. Like pick up the phone and let him know, hi, big giant donor, we've had some changes and here's what's going on. And he said, I've never heard from them. And it really bothered him. And I was listening to him, and it was a very sincere, letdown to him that I thought I mattered to the organization. I thought I was important. And so here's what's happening. The reason for the phone call is he loves the organization so much. He loves the mission of the work. He's going to start his own. Now, he won't be competing in the same market, so it's not, and the organization that he is talking about it's kind of in a mess, but he's going to start his own, which is beautiful because more children will be impacted. And what he asked for was, can you help us create this? And I said, absolutely. Here's the PowerPoint. Here's how you do it, because it's important to affect this. The organization who didn't say thank you to him and didn't steward him correctly, they're missing out on a whole lot, not just the gift that he gave every year, but the additional perks and the relationship that he has with other CEOs of major corporations, because that's the circle within he runs in. So the thank you piece is so important, the stewardship piece. I have a group that we work with, and one of the things that I've asked them midway through working together is, what have you learned? What's the thing that you have found the most valuable? And at the very end, the consensus is sending a thank you note, what that has done for their organization. They said, we believe that it's nice. Okay, we believe you, Barbara. We did it as you told us to, as you made us do it. We did it. And okay. But they didn't understand the repercussions, the positive repercussions it would have that they're seeing in a short period of time. things like a planned gift that was doubled because they thanked the donor. When they engaged the donor, he said, I have more money to give. What can you use it for? They had an answer for him immediately. They didn't dilly-dally and say, oh, let me go talk to the, no, here's what we want to do. Here's our vision. It's a six-figure gift. It's a significant, significant gift, and because of a thank you note. I am the biggest believer in saying thank you. People give because they want to be recognized. That is the number one reason. And recognition means your name on a building or your name on a bridge or at a university, but it also means being recognized by the organization that you gave, and that's through a thank you. Buying some note cards and some stamps sets you apart simply because we don't get a whole lot of mail. I don't get anything in the mail that I ever want. So I just take it from my mailbox and usually take it to the recycling bin, and that's it. When you send that and you share something with them that's important that their money made possible, and we work with all of that. We work with all of our clients to develop that language and to get those stories and to make that happen. So excited to share just a quick overview of Simon Cross and our 4 points with all of you today.
Thank you, Barbara. 4 positive statements. You're in sales, think like an organizer. You have to ask, say thank you. Now, I want to flip it to the negative side. I want to ask you a question. What do you think, from your perspective, are maybe 1 or 2 of the most common mistakes that happen in the area of fundraising? And how can we correct ourselves in not making those mistakes?
Great question, Frank. It's very simple. People don't ask and they don't say thank you.
We got it.
That is, I have spent enough time and seen when that doesn't happen. So one of the philanthropists that I had an opportunity to sit down with, and this is a person who 7-figure gifts is in their portfolio that they give away. And they have sent $10,000 checks to organizations because they like them or they heard about them or they thought, hey, they're doing great work. And they never, ever received a phone call, a thank you. We got the check. that right there is when you get a check, you pick up the phone and you call to say, hey, we got the check. And here's why. Sometimes people want to know that when they've sent $100,000 through the mail, it got to you. It didn't get to someone else. It didn't go somewhere else. It got to the place it was intended. And there's always this like, oh, good, you got it. Because you picked up the phone. And then it gives you an opportunity to say thank you or to invite them to lunch or whatever it is that we can do right now with the COVID constraints. But when you don't say thank you and when you don't ask, I'm working with a woman who said, some so-and-so keeps asking what she can do, and I'm just waiting. And I said, you need to answer her. Because now she thinks you don't need anything. She's asked you 3 times. What are you waiting for? Well, what she's waiting for is for her to just offer the $25,000 that she's donated in the past. I said, that is not the way to go. It tells her, I guess they don't need my help. Oh, I guess they don't need anything now. Okay, I can now do something else. I said, don't do that, because what the problem is with this individual and with many people who don't want to make the ask, she's just too nervous to tell her what she needs. She's just too nervous to say, hey, we need resources. We need money for our general operating budget. Can you commit again at the $25,000 level? And she cannot do it. I said, she's going to go away. And that'll be that's on you as the CEO. That's on you to make sure that you know what you need. It also tells people that they're just not, they don't believe in your leadership either if you don't know what you need. If someone asks you, how can I help? What do I need? You need to have an answer for them. We need $10,000 to meet our budget this year. We need $50,000 to double the amount of children we're serving. You know what you need to tell them. She can't assume. She can think, well, yeah, they need money every year, but for what? And how is this going to impact? So that is the thing that we see happen, and she's gonna slip away. Like, go call her right now and say, I know you've offered, here's what we need. And it's gonna happen.
Right.
Deal. Thanks, Barbara. If you have any questions of Barbara, you can quickly unmute yourself and ask now, or we're going to transition into John Hughes talking about grant writing, and then we can also come back at the end with questions for either or both of them. So John Hughes, another one of our Simon Cross partners, vast experience with grant writing of all sizes and levels, from local to federal. And I'm going to turn it right over to John.
Great. Thanks, Frank. And I was reflecting on what Barbara was saying about responding to donors, because I know even in grant writing, you need to be able to say thank you to the donor, to the funder. And it's unusual. Sometimes you'll get a face-to-face with them, maybe, but to be able to write a letter and to say thank you is a significant point for them as well. And I think another thing to remember with individual donors is that you can lose 40% a year, and sometimes more if you're not saying thank you. So it's critical to be able to have that ongoing dialogue with people. So, the pandemic has really created some challenges for nonprofits. On an annual basis, before the pandemic hit, we knew about 4% of the nonprofits nationally will go away. They will just stop serving. They will no longer exist. During the pandemic, those numbers have jumped up to 11%. And I've seen figures of up to 40% estimates. I think that's a bit high, but we'll see in a couple of years what that really looks like. So the critical point that we find are those groups that are actively engaged in grant writing and especially in individual fundraising. But this is an important time to really begin to think differently, because in this crisis, there's something about Americans is that they step up. I don't know about you, but when I go out for coffee or I go out for drink or dinner or something when it's open, when they come back and say, what's the tip going to be? I want to tip more because it's the pandemic and I know the servers are having a hard time. And it's that same dynamic that takes place, I think, with giving right now, that Americans are very generous people, and it's an opportunity for us to reach out and to ask for that help. Now, it's important to really begin to think about expanding into different funding streams. Now, this is an important point because many groups are used to just working with philanthropy or just private foundations, and they've never gone after anything with a government grant. And you might want to really consider that because a lot of the shifts are taking place within foundations toward a lot of social justice issues, and they might be changing their portfolio to respond to a lot of things that are going on in society. So the governmental grants are always a great one. But even if you're big on government grants and you've done a lot of work in that area, to begin to shift to private foundations, to individual donors, corporations and businesses. And just like Barbara said, where you start with that kind of small target and you begin to expand out, there are lots of groups that are out there that you can begin to go after those funds. The other thing I think is really important, especially during this time, is to review some of your template documents. Now, let's be honest, if you're writing grants, you usually have written the same agency description 4 times and you've used it again and again and again. And you might want to dust that off. Every grant has a description of the agency. They have a description of the geographic area that you're working on or the target population that you're serving. And I've seen grants where those statistics were really old. You know, they were 5 or 6, 7 years old, and that made it look like people weren't up on the current dynamics. So that's a critical point. And also to really update your program solutions. What's your program plan? What are you doing to answer the need that's out there is critically important. And the other part is your fiscal picture. Can you really write a very clear narrative that explains how your financial system works so that people understand it? And they're going to have an assurance that when we give you money, you're going to be able to handle that appropriately. So those are critical things to really dust off and really look back on those grants, especially the grants that you didn't get and why. And if you didn't know that, you can often, it's a great way to build a relationship with foundations and even the public sector. When you didn't get a grant, you can appeal, but you can also just say, hey, I'd like to get some feedback. And oftentimes that's the best lesson you can get, because you either get money or you get lessons. And if you want to really get a full lesson, ask for feedback. What was it that was missing on our grant? And trust me, that builds the relationship again and again. The other thing that I think is really important, and people often assume this in nonprofits, but not everybody does. You really have to think like an entrepreneur. The idea that we're doing good work and there's nice people out there that'll just give us money because we're doing good work. Well, you'll get some of that, but the reality is, to be an entrepreneur, you are thinking differently because you're seeing the market and who's out there and what can you do and what's your niche in the midst of that. And you're not just looking for charity, you're looking for investors, and that you can talk about a social return on investors. So your social ROI, when you start talking about that to a businessman and saying, well, look, if we can address the issue of the homeless in this community, this investment is going to help us to have less homeless. They're going to be working in the community and paying taxes. And we've figured out that every person that we get off the street is going to be able to produce X dollars, even at a minimum wage. And here's some of our modeling. They'd love that. They love that idea because you can show them their investment, not just their philanthropy, their investment in your organization has a different impact that helps them at the end of the day. So really, it's important to have that practical idea of what's a fundraiser going to think differently about that, but what's a business person going to do? The other thing I think is to really have a hard look at your organizational systems. Now, Barbara talked about, being able to say thank you to people, but I knew an organization and one of my clients recently, and they got a very large six-figure gift. It was over $125,000, I think was in the range. And they were writing thank you notes once a month. And I said, wait a minute, you just got $125,000 and it's the first of the month and they're not going to hear from you until the beginning of next month? Have you thought about sending them a bottle of wine or flowers or something right now to say, and it was like a brand new idea. So looking at your system, your organizational system that says, wait a minute, what is our mechanism that we have to go through to help people and to respond to them so that it's quick? Every Tuesday and Thursday, thank you notes go out. You constantly are building a system and a process to be able to help people. The other thing to think about, and you want to be careful because you don't want to get into mission drift, but there's a trend taking place right now in society, especially with a lot of the unrest that's going on. Law enforcement is under a lot of attack about some of the folks are wanting to defund the police. Some people are saying, well, wait a minute, we just really need to shift funding. If I was heading up a nonprofit right now in any city, I would be going to the police department and looking at how can I partner with them? Because there's going to be a need for crisis response, mental health services, after action kind of support to whatever's going on. And there will be funding. If they take money from funding sources from the police department, they'll be putting that over in other areas to support mental health and community health type of things. So it's something to begin thinking about on the different areas that you can begin to go into. and really begin to expand into those areas. I think the other thing to remember as you're working on grants and grant writing in general is don't do it alone. This is, nobody's as smart as all of us. And you could write something beautifully and think, I've got this wired. This is the most perfect answer to this question. And somebody else will read it and go, I don't get it. So trust me, on grant writing, you always want to have other people that are reviewing the work that can help you to begin to think through what's being said and make sure that it's being reviewed 6 different ways. It's a critical point. So be open to people working. This is a crisis. People are going to respond, but you have to be able to ask, and asking is that initial contact. The other thing to think about is during the COVID, it's hard to really meet with some of the private foundations. And so if you can form what I call a one-sheet, a briefing document, if you can get on a Zoom call, that's a great thing. Even before you ask for money, just to say, hey, can I do a briefing with you about our organization and tell you who we are? That's a great way to start a relationship. Foundations are like that. They want to know about the different groups that are out there. And it's important to remember, especially when dealing with foundations, they need the nonprofits. When I first heard that, I went, what? No, we need them. No. If I'm a program manager with a large foundation, I need to find the right people that are out there that are doing the work, because my job is to give them money and ensure that they're going to do good work. So I have to have a relationship and a confidence that these people are going to do the work that I've asked them to do. Right? So when you realize it, it's a mutual relationship. So if you begin to introduce yourself and say, let me tell you who we are, let me share our resume of what we've been doing, and I'd like to just get to know you guys. That's a great starting point. And they oftentimes will say, well, how could we help you? And that's where Barbara's thoughts about, you better have 2 or 3 ideas right now of what you could say. I need help with this, this, and this. And a little trick with that, I've found what you really want, put it in the middle. Well, for $10,000, we could help our food bank expand to 2 extra days. If we had $40,000, we could do this. And if we had $70,000, we could do this. People want the middle answer. Trust me, it works every time. Try it with your kids, it'll work. So building those relationships and really starting that dynamic is a really important thing. So getting beyond that normal funding stream is very, very critical. And I think as you're going through this, and it kind of comes back to this idea of organizational capacity, is sometimes we view our work a certain way and we say, I only work with the homeless, or I'm only doing this part of the work with the veterans, or I just educate kids this way. And we often forget a larger picture that is out there. So it's important to be able to get out and to begin to think about who else is doing this work. Where are the gaps? I was talking to a colleague yesterday, and he was saying that in his state of Virginia, there is only one group. There's only one group that can respond to helping people come out of prison. And he says they capture everything. And I thought, wow, wouldn't I want to know about that? If I was running an organization, like, I could go there and help, but be able to understand the different dynamics and what other options that might be are out there, or something to consider. So again, think like an entrepreneur, review all of your template documents, expand into other funding sources and begin to think about that. Really build your organizational capacity. And if you really want to stand out, make sure that you are thanking donors, even the ones that are public folks. Send them pictures, send them a handwritten note, invite them to an event. You want to build a relationship with them. It's critical. So I'll turn it back to you, Frank.
Thanks, John. John, I have a question for you. If your nonprofit does not have someone who's dedicated to grant writing with that experience in that area, grants can range, as you and I know, anywhere from several thousands of dollars to multi-million dollars. In your experience, where does it where does that line between I can write this myself, it's pretty simple, it's a smaller dollar amount, and boy, I really need to have somebody with some really good grant writing experience to help walk me through it. Is there kind of a dollar range that a nonprofit might want to be looking at getting help?
You know, I don't know that it's so much a dollar range, because I've seen some grants. Frankly, I'm working on one right now that's going to be about 5 pages in length, and it's worth $6 million. And I've written 30-page grants that were worth $500,000. So it really varies. What I think is important is to look at your track record on grant writing. Are you getting grants? And if you're not, why? And to have that hard look. And so we often do edits for people after they didn't get it or did get it. Sometimes we will actually, and we actually have a number of clients that we work with where we write grants for them. And now that we've built a relationship and we understand their programming and what's worked, we can see why there were some challenges in the previous grants that were submitted.
Thanks, John. Hey, I'm going to open up any questions any of you have. Feel free to unmute yourself. Otherwise, we're going to get ready to wrap up here, but I don't want to overlook that opportunity. I want to thank all of you for taking time to be with us today. And if we can help you out, please reach out to us. You can find us at our website, SimonCrossLLC.com, and you can reach out, contact us there. You'll find out a little bit more information about our services as well. This recording we will make available to all of you. So again, thank you so much for your time, and we hope that you have a great rest of your week.
Take care, guys.